Grace. I am your host, Eva May, and today we have a very special guest, Grace Welter, here to talk about the voting age in Michigan. Good morning, Grace.
Good morning, Eva.
So, Grace, my first question for you is, what do you think the voting age in Michigan should be? Should it be lowered to 16?
Well, right now the voting age is 18, and this is the perfect age for young adults to start voting. The voting age, I do not think should be lowered to 16.
But don't you think teenagers are responsible and mature enough to vote at the age of 16? They should be able to have a choice to vote at 16, so therefore the voting age should be lowered.
No, I disagree for many reasons.
Well, those who claim 16-year-olds are not mature enough to vote are wrong. Just like you can't tell someone's ability to work, you can't tell someone's maturity level based on others. Not all teenagers grow up the same, and some, if not most, develop faster than people assume. 16-year-olds have proven their maturity through other things, however. They are where the movements start and how they continue. Teenagers this age are able to do so many things, and if they're able to protest and create awareness to such big topics, such as gun violence, police brutality, March for Our Lives, Black Lives Matter, and many more, then they have the maturity to be able to vote and take the final step in changing any governmental issues. They have proven their maturity this way.
That's fair, but like you said, you can't tell someone's maturity level based on others. So just because some 16-year-olds are participating in these movements doesn't mean that they're all that responsible. Not only that, but also they'd be selfish and they don't have the education to make a vote on something as important as the candidates that would be representing the state of Michigan. 16-year-olds still need to be taught more practical social studies skills such as civics and state/national law that applies to teenagers in high school and perhaps even earlier. 16-year-olds are emotional and most don't have the financial responsibilities of an adult, so they couldn't vote on things that adults take care of.
Giving these 16-year-olds the ability to vote ties along with the preamble. Lowering the voting age to 16 will establish justice, where more teenagers will have the ability to state their opinions and stand up for what they believe in. 18-year-olds can do this when they have the right to vote, so 16-year-olds, being just as capable of understanding, should also have the ability to vote. This would establish justice by giving them as equal opportunity as 18-year-olds. Giving these teenagers the ability to vote ties along with the preamble. Lowering the voting age to 16 will establish justice, where more teenagers will have the ability to state their opinions and stand up for what they believe in. 18-year-olds can do this when they have the right to vote, so 16-year-olds, being just as capable of understanding, should also have the ability to vote. This would establish justice by giving them as equal opportunity as 18-year-olds.
But it also ties into the preamble in other ways. Keeping the voting age at 18 like it is now means promoting the general welfare. If 16-year-olds could vote, it would start a ruckus in the state. In the state, we call for peace, health, morality, and safety among the citizens. Since the older generation does not agree with the idea of 16-year-olds voting, it would be a safety hazard due to people overreacting and people doing hazardous things in order to show they don't like 16-year-olds voting.
To change it up a little bit, let's go over some of our reasons why the voting age should or should not be lowered. So, Grace, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have many reasons, but one is if a 16-year-old could vote, then that's practically saying they should be able to use, buy, and sell alcohol and drug products. Individuals must be 21 to purchase alcohol and 19 to purchase tobacco products. If individuals must reach these ages to make these decisions, then a 16-year-old cannot make a good decision while voting. Not only can they make bad decisions while voting, if the ages were to be lowered for the selling of tobacco and the selling of alcohol. Well, Eva, what do you think?
Well, from one article stating that the voting age should be lowered to 16, it says many teenagers drive, work, and some even pay for things like gas or food. If teenagers, specifically 16-year-olds, are responsible enough to drive, they should be allowed to have the responsibility to vote as well. Giving 16-year-olds the responsibility means they would be able to have a voice in the laws that affect their lives and their future as well.
$50, please. Thank you. Enjoy your croissants.
Thank you.
That is a very valid point, Eva, but 16-year-olds are very easily influenced. Most, if not all, still live at home, and their parents' opinion, of course, carry a lot of weight. Voting is an important thing, and it is a key part of being a citizen. It's a responsibility. Although some activists say that voting young encourages continuing participation in the electoral process, 18 is already young enough. Having 16-year-olds who already have a whole host of worries and stresses have to educate themselves on political parties is something cruel. It's full of slimy politicians, tragedy, crime, and corruption, and it could make a young person very cynical. As nice as the idea of votes at 16 sounds, and has worked in some countries, I think we should stop trying to rush kids to grow up. Hi, Mom.
Hi, honey.
Do you like Trump or Hillary better?
Well, who do you like better?
I think I like Trump.
I like Hillary.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I like Hillary too.
Another point from that same article says that allowing 16-year-olds to vote would not only benefit teenagers by giving them the ability to have some impact on our society, but would also raise a participation rate for voting. The more voters we have, the more of an impact the people have on what goes on in society and how things can be fixed or changed.
But teenagers are too irresponsible to vote for things that in most cases their parents and or other adults take care of. For example, a 16-year-old might vote for a candidate that might say something that would benefit them only. For example, a candidate might say that they will make a new law about kids having to start school at 9 and kids not having to wear uniforms anymore. All 16-year-olds would vote for that one candidate because it's benefiting them, but they wouldn't even take into consideration the actual problems that need to be solved and the candidates that would solve these problems. Hey girl, I haven't seen you in so long. I know. Did you hear that Bernie, if he gets elected, is making a new law that kids don't have to wake up until 9?
No way! I'm voting for Bernie.
Me too, let's go.
The second article explains that allowing 16-year-olds to vote will give them the ability to stand up for who and what they believe in, which is very important to many teenagers. Being a kid or teenager now is a lot different than it was just 5 years ago. Technology has a huge role in this, and teenagers this age are learning firsthand how people act and certain consequences that come out of advances in technology, good and bad. Because we teenagers have grown up with these advances and things like social media or the internet in general, we're able to decide for ourselves how we feel about certain topics, people, or ideas. For example, President Trump has a Twitter account in which he reacts to certain things or states his ideas, and we understand his ideas through these types of social media platforms. We're able to form our own opinions on the president and his ideas this way.
Did you see Trump's new tweet?
Oh, that's pretty funny.
I literally hated it. He's so disrespectful.
Well, people have their own opinions.
Going back to what I said previously, they would be selfish and don't have the right education to make that kind of vote. Their brains don't stop developing until the mid-20s, so this just shows that they're too irresponsible to make that kind of decision for the state. What do you think?
Well, carrying on from my previous article, the decisions adults make right now and how they vote affects 16-year-olds more than those adults in the future. This means that they should have the right to vote. Giving them this right will allow them to use their knowledge of current events or things affecting the U.S. today. The combination of both adults and 16-year-olds' knowledge can really benefit our country, starting with the state of Michigan. So, do you have any data supporting your thoughts?
Yes. One source said that 75% of registered voters opposed allowing 17-year-olds to participate in elections. 84% opposed allowing 16-year-olds to vote. 54% of the respondents denied and agree with voting. This very highly and supports my argument of not allowing 16-year-olds to vote because a high number of Americans don't believe that 16-year-olds should get the right to vote. The reasons for this is because many Americans still don't believe 16-year-olds are responsible enough and don't have enough experience to make those decisions. Do you have any data to support your points?
Yes, I have something as well to support the lowering of the voting age. In 1971, it was lowered from 21 to 18. Before this change, about 40% of people had voted. After this change, in 2016, for example, during the elections, 50% of people had voted. This data proves that because the voting age was lowered to 18, more people were able to vote and did. Now the age should be lowered to 16 because of similar reasons. 16-year-olds would have the chance to vote and bring the percent of voters up more, just like it did after 1971. What are your other reasons?
Well, my second piece of data is among Democrats, 65% said 17-year-olds should not be allowed to vote, with 78% saying the same about 16-year-olds. The data above very much supports my argument of not letting 16-year-olds to vote, because even Democrats don't believe in this idea. Usually Democrats are open to ideas and believe everyone should have a say on who's being elected and what laws are being made that can possibly benefit them. Democrats believe in more rule of the government, so having 16-year-olds vote would give more people say, but Democrats don't even think that 16-year-olds should have the right to vote. The number being 13% higher from people believing 17-year-olds should vote shows how no one likes the idea of the voting age being lowered in general.
That is fair, but to add to my reasoning, after the school shooting in Parkland not long ago, when 17 people were killed, and many more incidents like this one kept occurring, students decided it was time for a change. They used protesting to get the attention of the government to provide gun control and overall safety of these students. They are protesting for more gun control, but when they aren't able to vote, they aren't being given a full opportunity to allow this change. Among many more, providing them with the ability to vote allows these changes to happen, and things like gun control could be possible, rather than banking on the protests to get the word out.
Gun control now! Gun control now!
This visual supports my side of not being allowed for 16-year-olds to vote. This visual shows how many people ranging from all ages support 16-year-olds voting. Only 27% of people aged 18 to 34 believe 16-year-olds should be allowed to vote, compared to only 5% of 65-year-olds and up believe 16-year-olds should vote. In both cases, it's a very low number, and not many of any age group support 16-year-olds voting.
In contrast to that, a recent video from a news source talks about how 16-year-olds have to take higher responsibilities like paying certain taxes, working a job, driving, and more. These are all reasons why 16-year-olds should have the ability to vote. It also talks about the protests and movements on gun violence, March for Our Lives, Black Lives Matter, and more, and how these movements will benefit the younger generation the most, so they should at least be able to vote on these things. Giving them that final vote will ensure their message is heard. The video also shows a chart showing the percentage of eligible votes from ages 16 to 18, and more eligible voters who cast ballots were ages 16 to 17, meaning the lowering the age will benefit the voting rate.
When you turn 18, our society generally considers you an adult. You can join the military, you're eligible for jury duty, you can get that sweet tattoo that we all know you'll regret in 5 years. And of course, you gain the right to vote. That's when you finally get a say in how this country works. But over the past few years, with movements like Black Lives Matter and the March for Our Lives, we've seen young people under the age of 18 put pressure on lawmakers to take action on serious issues that affect them, like police brutality and gun violence. Combine that with the fact that at 16 you can work, pay taxes, and even be tried as an adult for some crimes, and it's pretty obvious that the country's laws have an impact on nearly everyone well before they can cast their vote. Maybe we need to rethink the voting age. Should 16-year-olds be allowed to vote?
Not lowering the voting age to 16 has some core democratic values. One is ensuring domestic tranquility. Ensure domestic tranquility means peace among the citizens or peace within the country, and they ensure that relations among individuals or groups within the state or the country run smoothly. Ensure domestic tranquility goes along with not lowering the voting age to 16 because you want to make sure there is peace among all citizens in the state. If 16-year-olds could vote for representatives of the state of Michigan, there would be conflict. Some would not like that 16-year-olds are allowed to vote and think that they are still immature and responsible due to their reigns that continue to develop till their mid-20s. If Americans want peace and quiet at home, then letting 16-year-olds vote would not be the answer to this. Many Americans don't believe that the voting age should be lowered to 16 and still think that 16-year-olds need more education before this. Making sure there is peace among the groups in the country means that there needs to be peace between the young generation and the old generation, and the old generation would not like if 16-year-olds could vote.
Back to the pro side of this scenario, another part that relates to my side is justice. Justice means that all people should be treated fairly and equally in regards to receiving the benefits and burdens of society, the correction of wrongs and injuries, and in the gathering of information and making of decisions. If 16-year-olds are given the right to vote, they are being allowed justice. In the U.S., we are giving certain rights, and justice is one of them. If an 18-year-old can be eligible to vote, why shouldn't a 16-year-old be as well? The state of Michigan would not only benefit Michigan, but the whole country. This means the younger generations would have enough justice to be able to hold an important position in society as well. Right now, without being able to vote at 16, these younger adults are treated unfairly and are not able to take advantage of the benefits voting would give them, especially in their future.
Going back to why it's good that 16-year-olds can't vote is the common good. Common good means individuals must accept their obligation to promote the well-being of the community and work with others for the greater benefit of all. This means that you must be able to recognize who must sacrifice for the greater benefit of the society. In this case, 16-year-olds have to sacrifice because they're not getting all the same rights that 18-year-olds get, but they have to sacrifice that because if they were able to vote, then they would have irresponsible and uneducated votes, which would ruin American society.
Leaning back to the pro-sided situation, the 15th Amendment guarantees citizens the right to vote if they are of age. If gender, race, or color cannot deny someone the right to vote, why should age? Of course, some people are not mature enough, but at the same time, some are mature enough, and they can benefit society by being able to vote. This amendment allows the right to vote, but the age for being allowed to vote should be 16, where this amendment can hold true.
Well, Eva, the 26th Amendment to the United States Constitution lowered the minimum voting age in the United States from 21 to 18. The United States Congress approved the amendment on March 23, 1971, and sent it to the states to be ratified. This supports my case of 16-year-olds not being allowed to vote because in 1971, when they changed the voting age to 18, due to 18-year-old soldiers who served in the war and believed they should get the right to vote if they are serving for the country, then they would have changed the voting age to 16 if that's what they thought was right. But since 16-year-olds cannot be drafted into war or draft themselves until they're 18, then 16-year-olds should not be allowed to vote. In 1971, they would have changed the voting age to 16 if that's what they thought the U.S. citizens should be allowed to vote.
To finish off here, I'd like to conclude that young kids, like 16-year-olds, are young enough where they're still growing and adapting to society today and how much it has changed. They still, however, have so much responsibility and are capable of more than just voting and helping with big decisions this way. Voting gives them the equal chance to spread awareness, stand up for their beliefs, and build the economy. It would provide benefits to them such as anyone else that has the ability to vote.
Well, Eva, to finish off my time here with you, I'd like to conclude that, like I said before, 16-year-olds should not be able to vote because of their brains are still developing. This is proof that they are too irresponsible to vote and don't have enough experience in big decisions like they would have to make if they were allowed to vote. Not only this, but just because 16-year-olds can't vote does not mean there is not inequality in the state. All 16-year-olds cannot vote.
Well, Grace, thank you for being here with us today. You made very valid points, and I'm glad you were able to come.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. And that concludes our nightly news.